Today's show is brought to you by Boat Pattani of Boat Avenue and Shambhala, Phuket. For more information on their properties, see the link in the description below. Good morning, Thailand. Welcome to Friday's program as we whip around the country and find out what's happening. And we say thank you very much to our sponsors, Shambhala. We'll figure out how to say it one day. Hi, Jay.
Hi, good morning.
How do you say it? Shambhala.
I say it Shambhala.
Is it like an Indian word?
It sounds Indian, but it could be, possibly. Maybe in Sanskrit or...
We'll check with our guest in a moment how we should be saying it. Sad to report that we've got 17,345 new COVID infections announced today. Another 117 COVID-related deaths. This number actually is down from yesterday, but down from a record high. 681 cases reported in Thai prisons, and 10,600 people have now been released from care. So those people at least are going home and getting back to some sort of normal life. We should remember that nearly 1,000 people are currently on artificial respiration in hospitals in Thailand. So it is a fairly acute problem at the moment. But the main story from overnight is some additional restrictions that have been added for Phuket. And to find out about that, we're going to speak to Mr. Sandbox, Bill Barnett from C9 Hotel Works. Hi, Bill.
Hi. Hi, Tim. Hi, Jay. And greetings from Shambhala. Shambhala actually is very similar to Shangri-La. So it's a Buddhist term. It goes back to that, that kind of dreamlike place where you go to heaven, right?
So you're saying Shambhala comes from Shangri-La?
Well, no, Shambhala, actually Shangri-La comes from Shambhala.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
in certain terms, but there's also, Shambhala is deeply rooted in Buddhism as well. So there's a lot of interpretations with language and religion. So.
Okay. Thanks for that, Bill.
It's a happy place. It's a happy place.
It's a happy place. Now, last night there was a blogger who decided to write the headline, Phuket goes into partial lockdown. I suppose, Bill, we're not really going into a lockdown in Phuket. We're still free to largely move around. In fact, we're perfectly able to move around, but there has been some additional layers added to the island.
One of the restrictions that's coming in place between August 3 and the 16th is going to be restricting domestic travel between the island and the mainland in terms of international travel. Sorry, not international travel, but domestic travel. Certainly, flights already are stopped, and they're going to stop traffic as well. There are certain exceptions to that rule, but what they're trying to do is keep the sandbox now and address the quarantine situation on the island where you're having, outbreaks throughout Thailand, not have imported cases. So again, it's an effort to maintain the sandbox to keep working at a time when throughout Thailand and the red zones, you're seeing large outbreaks of COVID-19.
I see. Bill, I guess the main question right now on everyone's mind is if the trend of the cases in Phuket continues, is the sandbox going to end?
That's an interesting question. We're receiving a lot of, I've got a little screen, I've got some
Bill's got some slides. Here we go.
Okay, I've got some slides.
Wow, the technology.
And there are a lot of questions about the sandbox. I think there shouldn't be the fear that you're going to wake up one day and the sandbox is gone. There is a process for this in place. Despite COVID-19 being quite erratic and fluid situation, basically there is a situation where it's step by step what they call the circuit breaker. And again, we've been through reduced activities already where we've seen restaurants being closed at 9 o'clock. We're seeing certainly sports facilities being closed as well. Business still on the island is largely normal and you're able to get around and undergo regular activities, but schools certainly are shut down as well.
And so is the big central shopping centre too.
Correct. And as if you look at the chart above, again, travel via sealed routes. So right now, the only real way after the 3rd of August into Phuket by air is going to be international sandbox flights, okay? So that's going to be a change as well. You're not going to see people driving down from Bangkok being able to come into Phuket.
Bill, been reading in some of the other social media around the country.
I think something else now. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, some of the other social media are saying that Phuket's being selfish. It's all about Phuket. Why aren't we talking about the other problems and the other situations around the country? Is Phuket being selfish by all the attention coming in here, all the interests of the TAT focused here, all the vaccinations happening here?
I think we have to get our terminology correct. People always talk about tourists, and we're talking about travelers. And I think I have a little slide here. You know, when we're looking at the impact of the Sandbox, we've got about 13,000 visitors or travelers who have come to Phuket. The reality of this, many of these people who have come are reconnecting with families. Families are being reunited. People are also coming back to see their friends. We're seeing travel. We're seeing business travel as well. So for the most part, the Sandbox for the early days, for the first month, we've got about 13,000 people who have come in. We've seen people coming in from the UAE and other countries where we're seeing the hotels. But I guess when we look at proof of concept, you know, the hotels which were running single-digit occupancy are running 20 to 30% occupancy now in many cases. Now, that's not going to make hotels break even, so it is an economic stimulus. I think what's important when we say is Phuket being selfish, not really, because it's a proof of concept for Thailand. You can't separate Phuket and Thailand. And more important, when you go throughout Asia, everybody is looking at Phuket and saying, how can we reopen? How is this, you know, this Sandbox has enormous consequences, not for Phuket, not for Thailand, but for the entire region to get back to a new normal, which is meaning we're going to have to live with COVID-19 and be able to travel.
Bill, for the amount of people that have traveled into Phuket, you said around only half of them are travelers. What about these?
No, half of them are tourists.
Sorry, yes, tourists. So my question is regarding the hotels and all the businesses that have opened up. Now, with these added restrictions, I'm guessing most of them wouldn't be able to keep up. And as things are heading and more restrictions are being added, how long will they be open for?
I think the reality that we've seen with Sandbox is that, you know, Phuket has to address foreign tourists. You know, Phuket traditionally is sub 10% of domestic tourism. Domestic tourism's not going to pay the bills for Phuket. It's not going to keep the industry alive, similar to Koh Samui and other destinations like that in Thailand. So you have to make a choice, and Phuket's made that choice for international traffic. I think what's important is looking at the international direct flights coming into Phuket and understanding. We've seen the top 5 groups of people traveling on the Sandbox right now, according to immigration statistics, are travelers, and these come from the US, these come from the UK, from Germany. We start to see from the UAE and from these countries as well, and Israel. So there's a correlation between airlift and where people are coming in. The only thing we can't say for sure is these, you know, the immigration statistics are by passport and not by residence. So if you're British and coming from Dubai, you're going to be showing that you're coming from the UK. So that's important to understand. But again, we are seeing airlift coming in, and this is where we're seeing the numbers come in. We talked to the airlines yesterday at a meeting at the Banyan Tree together with TAT, and we do understand that when we go back and look last month, you know, we can see on the weekends, we see spikes of travel. We see between 200 to 300 travelers coming a day. But the impact on what's happening in Bangkok is impacting travel sentiment, and the airlines are reporting fewer bookings coming in. So I think that is an issue. Now, maybe perhaps on a brighter spot, we do have new flights coming in August. We've got Cathay Pacific coming in from Hong Kong. We've got Oman Air coming in, also Gulf Air coming in from the Middle East. So we are seeing new airlift, and that's at least a positive trend in having the airlift there. But I think from a tourism perspective, we're very worried about the Thai airlines. There's 7 Thai domestic airlines in the country. About 170 airplanes right now are grounded and aren't flying anywhere in Thailand because of the broader situation. So is Phuket being selfish? We're trying also, everybody's trying to do their bit, but I think everywhere is looking to how can the Sandbox provide a model where you can say there's some kind of safety and surety for travelers to come. And I think it's not a matter of tourism, it's a matter of travelers.
Bill, so like you said, you know, right now we're only focusing on the Sandbox and Phuket, but the situation around the country is quite extreme. And even now in Phuket, things just seem to be getting worse and restrictions keep on getting added. So I guess my main concern and my main question would be, doesn't it feel like we're heading towards more restrictions and perhaps even a full lockdown?
I don't think so. I think that the Sandbox we have to learn to live with it. We've seen places like the UK where they're saying they're going to have to learn to live with it. Singapore has come out as well and saying where, you know, they're going to have to learn to live with COVID-19. And you're going to have to be able to travel. Again, there's risks. You have to minimize those risks. here's a slide which we kind of look at the vaccination rates in possible countries where people are flying to the Sandbox from, with the UK, with Spain, with Italy, Germany, France. These countries have fairly high rates of vaccination. So I think in terms of them coming to Phuket, Phuket's been able somewhat to contain the virus right now. We understand 20 cases, 30 cases a day. But again, when you look at the Sandbox numbers, it's 0.20. It's a fraction of that, in terms of Sandbox COVID cases right now. So it is manageable per se. I think what we do is we have to take a forward look about what's going to happen the rest of this year at URSA. We can't just say, if the Sandbox continues, where travel is going to come from. And I think, it's a safe bet to say they're going to come from highly vaccinated countries here, also from the US, which is highly vaccinated. One thing, looking into the winter, we traditionally rely on Chinese and Russian travelers for tourism. Those represent about 45% of international arrivals in 2019. And if we look at Russia right here on the chart, we see that Russia is very low vaccination rate. And also the Sputnik vaccine has not been approved in Thailand. So I think in terms of our prospects going into the end of this year, is we understand that really for tourism to restart, it's going to be going into 2022.
Bill, just finally, and sorry to be a bit of a wet blanket, and I understand your optimism, but if the situation does continue to get worse, if we do have to close down the Sandbox in Phuket, what does that mean for Thai tourism?
I think it's not a place we've seen before. We've seen disruptions to the airports during the political events about a decade ago. With the tsunami, there was a very short disruption of the airport. We've not seen the country locked off. We saw that last year, certainly, and that had devastating impacts on the country to be able to shut down and say. I don't think we can compare the situation to something like Australia, which has a wealthier demographic and everything else. People can't eat. People can't. If you look at the amount of daily workers in Thailand, you look at Klong Tui and these type of workers. We have to be able to learn with COVID-19 to be able to deal with it some way and get through this. But we can't just shut and bury our hands, basically bury our heads in the sand and say, maybe this will just end someday. That's not going to happen, right? So at the end of the day, we've got to learn to live with it. And I think that's our messaging. Is it's interesting with the Sandbox. The Sandbox is an experiment. It's going to be learning for it. But again, everywhere in Asia is looking at the Sandbox and saying, how are you guys doing it? How can we do it? So we can have a lot of criticism for that. But in terms of the success, if I see 13,000 people getting back and seeing friends and family being reunited and being able to travel again, to me, that's a positive, in my opinion.
All right, Bill, back to the sandpit, back with your spade and your bucket. Thank you for your time this morning, and we'll watch with interest over the next few weeks. It'll be very interesting.
Okay, thanks, guys. Have a good day.
Thank you, Bill. Have a nice day.
Bill Barnett from C9hotelworks.com, and we'll be back with more of Jay and Tim and Good Morning Thailand after this. Domestic travel to Phuket gets additional layers of restrictions from August the 3rd for 2 weeks. The Black Club, the Bamboo Hut, the COVID-19 outbreak on Koh Samui widens. Methamphetamine pills hidden in instant noodle packets delivered for COVID patients, northern Thailand bordering Laos. The Bangkok's Chulalongkorn University progressing on locally developed mRNA vaccines. And the Bangsu vaccine scam under investigation, 7 volunteers and counting to be questioned. Welcome back to Good Morning Thailand. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Jay, what did you think of what Bill had to say?
Well, I'm definitely not as optimistic towards that topic. And if I was a person living in Bangkok and I saw international travelers flying into Phuket and enjoying the Sandbox, I would be slightly furious in a way, because wouldn't I want, if I could afford it, wouldn't I want me and my family to go be in a place like Phuket rather than in a dark red zone in Bangkok?
So you're saying that the international travellers who are fully vaccinated can come here,
yes.
So why can't everybody else?
Exactly, and there's so many restrictions for domestic travel, which they do make sense, and I understand that, but it doesn't make sense at the same time to allow so many people to come in but not let our own people move here as well.
And we should remember that the situation around the region is not particularly good at the moment, with just about all the countries around us having a rising number of cases and deaths, including Vietnam, which is sort of heading in the same direction as Thailand, reporting nearly 5,000 infections yesterday. The hot zone there is in Ho Chi Minh City in the south. Malaysia, 17,000 new cases yesterday, with a population about half of Thailand. Myanmar, over 5,000 cases announced yesterday. Indonesia, 40,000 new cases. Also, if you have a look at the graph around the world, and we've got a graph we can show you, this is not a good look, because we've got this third wave now of COVID-19 on a worldwide perspective, and it's going up and up. Interestingly, one of the hotbeds is the US, where everything looked like it was now under control, and there was a lot of optimism and a lot of opening up and removing of masks. But there's been a 7-fold increase in new COVID infections in the country over the past 6 weeks. And also the number of deaths is starting to rise there. So I think that's a particular problem for US citizens to address. Let's have a talk about the Olympics. We're having a talk about them the other day in regards to the fireworks, but a big announcement a few days ago.
Well, I have a question for you, Tim. In the last couple of days, a new host city has been elected for the... Sorry, not elected, been chosen for the Olympic Games for 2032. Do you know which country it's in?
No, 2032. I'm going to be an old man by then.
I'll give you a hint. It's in Australia.
Okay.
And it is Brisbane.
Okay.
So have a quick look at this video first. It's been selected as the Olympic city for 2032. What do you think about the Olympics? Do you think it'll be good for Australia, good for Brisbane?
Well, the Sydney Olympics went really, really well. Brisbane's hosted the Commonwealth Games in the past. Melbourne's hosted the Commonwealth Games and the Olympic Games. And also was vying, I think, I can't remember which Olympics, but it missed out on those. I think the Olympics go down pretty well in Australia. And the government's been able to somehow finagle their way to make a profit, even though they put on a pretty good show. So yeah, good on Brisbane, and good luck to them. But that's 11 years hence. I'm going to be in my 70s.
We've got something to look forward to.
Yes, well, me being in my 70s.
No,
not for me. A bit of bad news. Looks like Thailand's heading for what we call a double dip recession. That means it was in recession last year and it's going to be in recession again this year. And some of the banks are predicting that the GDP rise in Thailand could be as little as 1% growth this year, but certainly a long way down from the growth of 5-6% in the years preceding. So not a good look there for Thailand's economy with that possible double dip recession. But for now, we'll have another quick break, Jay, and we'll come back with all the comments on Good Morning Thailand. China's warning the UK's carrier strike group not to carry out improper acts as it enters the South China Sea. Hong Kong police launch a probe into booing of China's national anthem at a shopping mall as crowds watched an Olympic event on TV. The US urges the UN Council to press Myanmar to stop violence and return to democracy. Malaysians fear possible COVID-19 cluster from the crowded KLCC vaccination centre. And 4,992 new COVID infections and 159 more deaths reported in Vietnam today. Good Morning Thailand is the program. Thank you for joining us. And it's time to get into the comments, Jay.
Yep.
And we had a Zoom call yesterday featuring some of the Thai Air Asia staff all in one Zoom call with a very foul-mouthed CEO. Gurf Davies said, "You'd think the F word is okay in a work meeting, but you wouldn't say it yourself on the program. No one should have to put up with someone being rude at work." Interesting. We can't say the F word because YouTube would demonetize the program if we did that. So there are actually regulations that stop us from saying it. But as far as a private conversation in what's meant to be a private Zoom call, didn't end up that way. Yeah, I'm not sure if it deserved quite the flack that it got. Duang Pantavong said, regarding that foul-mouthed CEO, there's no room for a jerk like that, especially when you're a CEO of a company. I don't know how people would treat a guy like that in UK or Thailand, but rest assured that getting fired is the least he would have to worry about here in the US. Certainly in the United States, human resources would make sure that that sort of activity doesn't happen. But here in Thailand, well, it probably does. Another one I've got is from a story in the Thaiger.com, planning for Pattaya move on, reopening scheme continues. And Gummy says, oh, move on, as they say. Wait, what did they say they wanted Pattaya to move on to? Reopening, they say, but what do they wish to reopen? Would it be reopening the traditional Royal Thai police extortion of foreigners, allegedly? Reopen the mafia grip on ripping off people and renting jet skis? Or is it the wealthy property owners wanting to reopen the ripping off of bar owners? Well,
strong words there.
Pessimistic outlook for Pattaya, which of course is trying to reopen like the rest of the country. But at the moment, they've obviously got a little bit of cleaning up to do in the Chonburi province, including trying to get a lot of people vaccinated before that could even happen. Yep. What have you got, Jay?
I have a comment from our TNT last evening, taken from Nathan Ralph, and he's talking regarding the topic of sleeper trains being used to treat COVID patients. He says, those isolation trains don't look very isolating for those unfortunate enough to be in one. To which Hawk further replied, brilliant, let's sit on a train and go backwards and forwards until we feel better. Now, I'm guessing for people watching from outside, the fact that we have to treat these people on sleeper trains must be, astonishing. But we were talking about this yesterday, Tim, and you said that you thought it was a good idea.
Yeah, well, certainly the sleeper trains are not moving. They're not going anywhere. They're staying at the Bangsu station, so they're sort of being controlled in a controlled environment. There are different types of sleeper trains. I think the ones they were showing were the ones where there's a lot of different people in the carriage. There's also the sleeper trains which have got the isolated rooms. So I don't know. But I thought from the point of view of Bangsu being used as a vaccination centre, it's already got quite a lot of workers there that can help control the situation, health workers. By keeping it all in one facility, I thought that was probably a good idea. People were saying, but what about using hotels? Mm-hmm. What about using empty schools? I mean, I think they're also valid reasons. The only reason I thought it was a good idea, apart from being a bit of a novelty, was that they've already got quite a lot of health workers and healthcare facilities at some of these, at the Bangsu station, which is not really being ramped up as the new network centre hub for Bangkok Rail at the moment, but it will be probably as soon as we get through this crisis.
Yep.
All right, with that, we'll say thank you very much for everybody watching today. Hopefully you've learned a little bit more about what's happening. That's what we try and do. And we'll also be back with Thailand news today, this afternoon. And we've got a few surprises on the weekend. So keep watching YouTube and the Thaiger and have a great weekend. In Bangkok today, generally clear skies, and we've got a top temperature of 34 degrees, and we're down to 31 tomorrow. We've got some cloud and some sunshine all through the next 3 days. Down to the south and Phuket, good air quality down there today. Temperatures around 28 for the next 3 days, and we've got the wet season weather. Up to Thailand's northeast, and air quality 59 today is the measurement. Temperatures of around 31 and 30 degrees for the next few days, and they've got plenty of overcast skies but some sun coming out over the weekend. Heading to Thailand's north, and good air quality. For the weekend, we've got 29 on both Saturday and Sunday, a few showers around as well. To Thailand's central Gulf Coast, and temperatures of 31 today and 29 over the weekend. Clear skies and overcast. And in Banglamung, which includes Pattaya, we've got generally clear skies, temperatures 29, 28 and 29 for the next 3 days, bit of sunshine but cloudy and a few showers.